G'day, g'day. How you going? What do you know? Don't strike a light. G'day, g'day. And how you going? Just say g'day, 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 and you'll be right.
Welcome to the Midweek End Times News and Trends Briefing as we share major events and what is happening around the world as it relates to Bible prophecy. Today's date is Wednesday, August 23rd, 2017. As we look at some of the major news items around the world, our first attention that we focus on is Israel and the Middle East. We see a team that is heading over to that region right now, negotiating team headed by senior advisor Jared Kushner. According to the Elder Minor, says that he's heading to the Middle East as Arab leaders emphasize no peace without Palestinian State. So he's meeting with all the other people in that region and negotiating potentially a peace deal with the Palestinians and Israel. The Palestinians and Arab leaders have underlined that they will not consider any solutions that deviate from the 2002 Saudi-backed peace initiative, which calls for an establishment of a Palestinian state alongside Israel, with eastern Jerusalem as its capital. So again, there's a lot of complexities that are involved in negotiating this particular deal. And these are sort of the steps that we see eventually that will be taking place for the real deal agreement that the Antichrist eventually will sign. So he's not making this deal, but he will confirm this particular deal that will be in place. And I think these are just the beginning steps to seeing that taking place. Also concerning Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will be meeting with President Putin of Russia over Iranian presence in Syria, according to the Jerusalem Post. They will meet on Wednesday, and in the midst of the increasing concerns of that Iran is establishing a permanent military presence in Syria. This will be Netanyahu's fourth visit to Russia in some 16 months, a testament to Moscow's influence in the region as a result of intense engagement in Syria. In addition to the visits, again, Netanyahu and Putin speak regularly on the phone. But having Iran bases all throughout Syria and specifically approaching the borders of Israel is certainly a threat for the security and safety of the Israeli people. And so if Russia is able to help stop that from taking place or to back Israel in any way, shape, or form, I'm sure that they're trying to do whatever they can to negotiate some of those sort of options on the table. So it's just something for us to be aware of all the different developments of the happenings in Israel and throughout the Middle East. Moving on from there to the Asian region, North Korea, according to The Guardian, warns Australia that supporting Trump is a suicidal act, as we're starting to continue to see more of the tensions mounting with North Korea. They warned Australia that has committed a suicidal act by committing its troops to help the U.S. in any conflict over the North Koreans' nuclear program, and by joining military exercises with U.S. and South Korean forces. The official in the news agency noted from North Korea that Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull had recently vowed his country military would fight alongside the U.S. if the latter was attacked by North Korea. So Prime Minister of Australia mentioned in a news radio program that the U.S. were joined at the hip on the defense matters, and if there is an attack on the U.S., the Anzac Treaty would be invoked and Australia would come to the aid of the United States. And in response to the warning from North Korea, Turnbull hit back on Monday night, issuing a short statement saying North Korea has shown it has no regard for the welfare of its own population, no regard for the security and good relations with neighbors, and no regard for international law. And again, this is something that we're seeing on a regular basis of what's happening in North Korea, and it's nice to see the countries around the world wanting to see a stop to that. On another issue developing in the Asian region. This is an issue that is destroying so many people. It's this report of AccuWeather says 24 million people impacted by monsoons flooding in India, Nepal, and Bangladesh. So the worst flooding in more than a decade across the parts of Nepal, India, Bangladesh has impacted at least 24 million people. That's more than the population here in Australia. That's a lot of people have been affected by this. More than 800 people have lost their lives in the entire three countries since the monsoon season began in June, according to the Guardian newspaper. The death toll and the numbers impacted by those rising floodwaters receded and revealed the extent of the destruction. However, an additional downpours threaten more lives and property as the monsoons continues. The flooding in Nepal has claimed over 141 lives, while the death toll in Bangladesh has climbed to at least 115. The death toll rose 250 in the eastern state in India. And so during the worst of the flooding, most of the national park in that area, home to endangered one-horned rhino, has submerged. And the park director said that the flooding is the worst in 3 decades and has claimed the lives of at least 225 animals, including 5 or 15 of the rare rhinos. Nepal has one-horned rhino as well, saving after being swept 42 kilometers from the national park to the northern India by floods, according to the BBC report. So we need to be praying for the people there in that region, and if we can offer assistance to them, we'll let you know by the means and how you can send support or disaster relief, whatever we can do to come alongside these people. On to some separate issues that was interesting to read about this past couple days. According to Ynet News, this report about the Pope saying that the rights of migrants trump national security concerns. So he urged countries, the Pope is mentioning, to greatly improve their welcome of migrants and to stop collectively expulsion, saying migrants' dignity and rights to protect Trump's national security concerns. So the Pope's politically pointed message was made in view of the Catholic Church's 2018 World Refugee Day, which is celebrated on January 14th, and it comes in the midst of a mounting anti-immigration or immigrant settlement in Europe and beyond, following waves of migrant arrivals and Islamic extremist attacks. So in the message, the Pope demanded governments welcome, protect, promote, and integrate migrants, saying Jesus' message of love is rooted in welcoming the rejected strangers of every age. He demanded a simplified process in granting humanitarian and temporary visas and rejected arbitrary and collective expulsion as unsuitable. He said that the principle of ensuring each person's dignity obliges us always to prioritize personal safety over national security. Which makes it interesting when you see it's these migrants that are causing these terrorist attacks. So why would countries want to continue to bring these people in when they're going to attack your country? And you see this happening all throughout Europe, especially, where you're seeing how they're flooded with crime, rape, murders, and other types of attacks. So, no, the national security is absolutely essential for every nation. And so there needs to be a better vetting process in place. Anyways, that's a whole nother debate and conversation. And yes, we need to treat people with love and respect and to care for some of these migrant peoples. But why can't the countries around the world go back to these countries where they're coming from and to set up a better type of place for them to stay in, instead of having to migrate to different places around the world, when they can stay in their home country in a safe environment. So if countries came along together to work through those problems in those countries, we wouldn't have the refugee or the migration crisis. Another interesting article that came out of the Israeli National News, and this is kind of a very controversial type of perspective, but again, just the issue of racism has just gone off the charts, and also what is happening in the U.S. But according to this particular article, which was mentioned by Fox News contributor Jesse Waters, and it was entitled "Democrats Were the Party of Slavery." So he wants the public to remember that most of the Confederate war heroes were in fact members of the Democratic Party. Today, the same party is demanding that the statues of Confederate leaders be removed. He goes on to say, let's remember that all those Confederate war heroes were Democrats. Maybe the Democrat Party wants us to take down those statues so we can forget that it was the Democrats who supported enslaving black people. Let's also think that many on the left want to destroy any historical monument of great American leaders. He continued, the bust of Abraham Lincoln in Chicago was torched when he was the one that abolished it and did such an amazing work within the U.S. and one of the greatest presidents of all time. He was the one that freed the slaves. And so why are these people, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, all these others that are going against this man who, or attacking, destroying monuments when he was the one that freed them? Anyways, cities across the U.S. have been removing monuments of Confederate leaders, contending that these statues honor the institution of slavery and are offense to African Americans. These efforts accelerated after the rally last Saturday at Charlottesville, Virginia, protesting the removal of statue of Confederate figure Robert E. Lee turned into a neo-Nazi rally. And I wouldn't have been surprised if George Soros was the one that funded some of those people to do that as well. The U.S. President Donald Trump pushed back against the effort, saying this week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that the Stonewall Jackson is coming down. And he wondered if George Washington is next week, and if it's Thomas Jefferson the week after that. You know, you have to start asking yourself, where does it stop? With these liberal left people, it doesn't stop. It's going to continue. It's going to get crazy as this sort of agenda continues. And then lastly, another interesting report that came out of Natural News, which talks about a scientist being fired from the university after discovering shocking dinosaur bones believed to be only 4,000 years old. So a recent archaeological discovery throws a wrench into the controversial theory of evolution, as reported cost a Californian professor his job. So the former scientist, Mark Armitage, former scientist of Cal State University of Northridge, was reportedly being fired, claiming to have unearthed a dinosaur fossil that still contains soft, flexible tissue, suggesting it can't be millions of years old. The 30-year-old veteran in this field has published many studies over his years in peer-reviewed journals. One of his most recent, published last July, pertaining to the discovery that he made at Hells Creek Formation excavation site in Montana. According to a Christian Post, he was evaluating a Triceratops horn fossil when he came across preserved soft tissue. The lawsuit recently filed in his defense describes his reaction to the discovery as fascinated, and since the flexible matter has never before been discovered in a dinosaur fossil. Naturally, Armitage published his findings, and in this case he published them in a journal and proceeded to share his findings with his students. Not long after that, he was approached by the university faculty head, who shouted, "We're not going to tolerate your religion in this department." His findings, of course, contradict the evolutionary theory that Cal State Northridge has embraced for decades, and there doesn't appear to be any room for discussion on the matter since he was let go from his position. According to his lawyer, terminating an employee because of his religious views is completely inappropriate and illegal in a public statement. But doing so in an attempt to silence scientific speech at a public university is even more alarming. We should all wake up. This should all be a wake-up call and warning to the entire world of academia. Well, this sort of rhetoric has been going on for years and years and decades in the universities around the world. And this just goes to prove who is intolerant and who has a religious bias. Those who have the religious view of evolution, they bully anyone who disagrees with them or proves them wrong with scientific fact or evidence. These universities cannot tolerate free speech anymore, as we've seen time and again throughout different universities and protest. And as long as you're liberal, as long as you're anti-conservative or anti-Christian or anti-Trump, then it's okay to do whatever you want or say whatever you want. But they cannot have it both ways. And you see the double standard that these universities have, the hypocrisy that is there, and also within the media as well. They twist the agenda around to suit what they want. So this sort of attitude, and even the erosion of moral values in society, silencing anyone who is a Christian or even a conservative, is only going to get worse and worse and more aggressive. And so there's where you see how intolerant the media is, how intolerant the different communities within the universities these days. And as Christians, we need to stay informed, we need to stay alert, and we need to stand firm on God's truth and be bold and courageous in sharing and telling people the good news of Jesus Christ without compromise. Amen? And that concludes today's update. Until next time, may the Lord radically and outrageously bless you.